If you ignore this, you are rejecting God. Have you ever stood beneath a vast night sky, swallowed by its silence, and felt the whisper of something greater? Life is not a series of accidents, nor is your existence a lonely thread unraveling in the dark. Every joy, every sorrow, every unanswered question is but a note in the grand symphony of eternity, a melody woven with purpose even when you cannot hear its tune. Yet there is a voice beneath it all, calling, not in the clamor of certainty, but in the quiet weight of wonder. To ignore it is not merely to turn away, it is to sever yourself from the rhythm of meaning itself. For God is not absent. He is the unseen composer, the silent artist, the breath between moments. And if you listen, truly listen, you will find that your life has never been random, but part of a story written in the language of the divine. There is a voice beneath all things. It is not loud, not forceful, not demanding your attention like the noise of the world does. It is quiet, steady, ever present, whispering in the moments when everything else falls away. You have felt it before, in the stillness of the night when the weight of existence settles upon your chest, in the ache of longing when nothing in this world seems to satisfy, in the hush after loss when life suddenly feels fragile and fleeting. That voice is calling you, not in words you can always define, but in the deep places of your soul where truth is known without being spoken. But here's the great tragedy. Many of us ignore it. We drown it out with busyness, with distraction, with ambition. We fill our lives with noise because silence makes us uncomfortable. Yet silence, think about it, why is it that the stars seem brighter when the world is asleep? Why do we hear our own thoughts more clearly when everything around us is still? Why is it that in moments of crisis, when all else has been stripped away, we suddenly feel the undeniable presence of something greater? It is because God is always speaking, but we are not always listening. And if we are not listening, then what are we doing? We are rejecting Him. Not in a loud, defiant rebellion, though some do, but in the subtle, quiet refusal to acknowledge His voice. We ignore Him when we explain away the stirrings of our conscience. We ignore Him when we dismiss the moments of conviction that tug at our hearts. We ignore Him when we trade eternal truth for temporary comfort. But God does not stop calling, even in our rejection. He does not withdraw His voice. He weaves it into the fabric of our lives, in the beauty of creation, in the love of a child, in the kindness of a stranger, in the ache of longing that tells us we were made for more. And yet so many spend their lives running. We tell ourselves we don't have time to think about these things. We tell ourselves we'll figure it out later. But my friends, later is not promised. The most dangerous lie you can believe is that you have more time. Some of you here tonight know exactly what I'm talking about. You've heard this voice before. Maybe you heard it as a child when the world still felt full of wonder. Maybe you heard it in a moment of brokenness when you had nowhere else to turn. Maybe you're hearing it now, even as I speak, stirring something deep within you that you cannot explain. That is not coincidence. That is not emotion. That is the living God reaching out to you, calling your name, inviting you to return. So the question is, will you listen? Will you silence the noise, the doubt, the excuses? Will you open your heart even for a moment and allow yourself to hear the voice that has been speaking to you all along? Because the truth is, God is not distant. He is not absent. He is as close as the very breath in your lungs, as near as the beating of your heart. The only thing standing between you and Him is whether you are willing to hear. There is a lie the world tells us, and many believe it without question. It is the idea that we are self-sufficient, that we are the masters of our own destiny, that we have within ourselves everything we need to live a full and meaningful life. From the moment we are old enough to understand, we are taught to rely on our own strength, to chart our own course, to take pride in our independence. And yet, deep down, we know that isn't true. Because no matter how strong we try to be, life has a way of humbling us. The unexpected diagnosis, the phone call in the middle of the night, the dream that slips through our fingers. The moment we realize that all the success, all the achievement, all the control we thought we had can vanish in an instant. And in that moment, when we stand face to face with our own frailty, we have a choice. We can reach out for the one who has been holding us all along, or we can turn away and pretend we never needed him in the first place. Many choose to turn away, not because they hate God, not because they are openly rebellious, but because they cannot bear to admit that they were never in control. They cling to the illusion that they can handle it, that they can fix it, that they can carry the weight of their own existence without help. But my friends, that is a burden no human soul was ever meant to bear. And so we distract ourselves. We throw ourselves into our work, into our routines, into the endless pursuit of something that will finally make us feel secure. We convince ourselves that if we can just get that next promotion, that next relationship, that next milestone, then we will have made it. Then we will finally be enough. But no matter how much we achieve, there is always another mountain to climb. No matter how much we possess, there is always a deeper hunger that remains unsatisfied. No matter how much we try to prove our worth, the quiet voice of doubt still lingers in the background. Because we were not created to be self-sufficient, we were created for dependence, not on ourselves, but on the one who gave us life. Some people say that faith is a crutch, that belief in God is for the weak. But I tell you, the greatest deception is believing you can walk without him. Because one day, no matter how strong you think you are, your strength will fail you. Your intellect will reach its limits. Your ability to control your circumstances will slip through your fingers. And in that moment, what will you have left? The truth is, the only thing keeping you from surrender is your own pride. Pride that whispers, I don't need help. Pride that says, I can do this on my own. But pride has never saved a soul. Pride has never brought peace to a restless heart. And so I ask you tonight, what are you clinging to? What are you trusting in? Is it your career, your reputation, your own ability to hold everything together? My friends, if that is where your hope lies, then your foundation is built on sand. And when the storms of life come, as they always do, it will not hold. But there is another way, a way that does not depend on your strength, but on his, a way that does not leave you empty, striving, restless, but fills you with a peace that surpasses all understanding. And that way begins with surrender, not weakness, but the greatest act of wisdom a person can make. The decision to stop pretending you are enough on your own and finally reach for the one who always has been. Because the moment you let go of self-sufficiency is the moment you step into the strength you were meant to have all along. Life rarely unfolds the way we expect. We set out with our plans, our dreams, our carefully drawn maps of how things should go. And then, without warning, the road shifts beneath our feet. A door closes that we thought would stay open. A loss comes that we never could have prepared for. A season of waiting stretches far longer than we ever imagined. And in those moments, it is so easy to wonder, where is God in all of this? Some of you tonight are asking that very question. You've faced trials you never saw coming. You've walked through storms that have left you weary. Maybe you've tried to trust, tried to believe, but life keeps handing you pain and you don't understand why. If God is good, why does he allow suffering? If he has a plan, why does it feel like everything is falling apart? But my friends, hear me on this. Just because you don't see the pattern doesn't mean there isn't one. Just because you don't understand the story doesn't mean the author has lost control. Have you ever watched a great artist at work? In the beginning, the strokes seem random, the color scattered without meaning. If you stop watching too soon, you'll think it's just chaos. But if you wait, if you trust the process, you will see that every stroke had its place. Every shadow made the light shine brighter. Every detail, even the ones that seemed like mistakes, were woven into something far greater than you could have imagined, and so it is with your life. Nothing is wasted. Not the hardship, not the heartbreak, not the detours that seemed like dead ends. Even the moments you wish you could erase are being used by God in ways you cannot yet see, because He does not work on our timeline. He does not operate by our limited understanding. He is the master weaver, and the threads He is pulling together in your life stretch beyond what you can see in this moment. Think about Joseph in the Bible, a man who had every reason to believe his life had been ruined, betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, thrown into prison. Year after year, it must have seemed like his story was nothing but suffering and injustice. But God was writing a bigger story. And when the time was right, the very trials that seemed like his undoing became the foundation for the incredible purpose God had prepared for him all along. The same is true for you. The pain you have walked through is not meaningless. The tears you have cried have not gone unnoticed. You may not understand it now, but you are not abandoned and you are not forgotten. What seems like chaos to you is being orchestrated by the hands of the one who never makes mistakes. But here's the danger. When we don't see the pattern, when we don't understand the purpose, we are tempted to walk away. We decide that if we can't make sense of it, then God must not be there. If we can't see the full picture, then there must not be one. That is what it means to reject Him. Not in words, not in open defiance, but in the quiet decision to stop trusting, to turn away, to close our hearts, to assume that if life does not make sense, then God must not be good. But my friends, faith is not built on what we can see. Faith is trusting that even in the darkest moments, He is still at work. Faith is believing that one day, when we stand on the other side of eternity, we will look back and see that every moment, even the hardest ones, were threads in a masterpiece beyond anything we could have imagined. And when that day comes, we will realize that He was never absent. He was never silent. He was never far. He was right there, weaving something beautiful all along. There are many people in this world who have rejected God, not because they have truly known Him, but because they have been given the wrong picture of who He is. They have been told He is angry, distant, cruel. They have been made to believe that He is nothing more than a cold judge, a list of rules, a set of demands impossible to fulfill. And so they turn away, not from the true and living God, but from a distorted image of Him. Maybe that's you. Maybe you grew up hearing about God, but all you ever felt was guilt and pressure. Maybe someone who claimed to represent Him hurt you, betrayed you, or made you feel like you could never be good enough. Maybe the only version of God you've ever known is one that seemed too harsh, too unloving, too far removed from the struggles of real life. But my friends, that is not who He is. We must be careful not to reject the very thing our souls were made for simply because we have been shown a poor reflection of it. The world is full of flawed messengers, broken people trying to speak on behalf of a perfect God. And yes, some have misrepresented Him. Some have used His name to control, to condemn, to wound. But just because someone misuses the truth does not make the truth any less real. If a man stands in a dark room and says the sun does not exist, does that make it true? If a broken mirror distorts your reflection, does that mean your face is not real? No, the fault is not with the sun. The fault is not with the face. The fault is with what is blocking the light, what is twisting the image. And so it is with God. There are many voices in this world speaking about Him, but not all of them reveal His true heart. Some present a God who is only concerned with punishment, forgetting His mercy. Others present a God who never speaks of sin, forgetting His holiness. But the true God, the one who formed you, who knows you, who called you by name, is greater than all our misconceptions. Look at Jesus. If you want to know who God is, look at him. He did not come to condemn the world, but to save it. He did not come with fire and fury, but with hands that healed, words that restored, and a love so deep it carried him to the cross. He walked among the broken, the weary, the outcast, and he called them home. And yet, even when he stood before them in the flesh, there were those who rejected him, not because he was not real, not because he had not proven his love, but because their hearts were too hardened to receive it. They clung to their own understanding, to their own pride, to their own version of God, and in doing so, they missed the very one who had come to save them. The same danger exists today. There are some who reject God, not because he has failed them, but because they have never truly known him. They hold on to old wounds, to misunderstandings, to the actions of men instead of the heart of God himself. But tonight you have a choice. You can continue to hold on to the image of God you've built in your mind, or you can open your heart to who he truly is. You can let go of the bitterness, the confusion, the preconceived notions, and allow him to show you himself. Because the truth is, God is not who the world says he is. He is not who religion has sometimes made him out to be. He is not a distant figure watching from afar. He is near. He is not waiting for you to be perfect. He is calling you as you are. And if you truly seek him, if you truly open your heart to him, you will find that he has been waiting for you all along. Every choice we make shapes us. Every step we take, every decision, every moment of belief or disbelief is leading us somewhere. The direction of your life is not set by the loud declarations you make in moments of passion, but by the small, quiet choices of your heart, the ones no one else sees. And when it comes to God, there is no neutral ground. To ignore him is to reject him. To push him aside, to delay the decision, to say maybe later, is to turn your back on the very one who gave you life. Some believe that rejecting God is an active thing, that it requires shouting at the heavens, that it takes a hardened heart and a rebellious spirit. But the truth is, most people don't reject God in anger. They reject him in apathy. They reject him in distraction. They reject him by walking through life without ever stopping to realize that every breath they take is a gift from the very one they are ignoring. It is a slow, steady drift. It happens in the busyness of life, in the pursuit of success, in the endless distractions that keep our minds occupied and our hearts numb. And one day, a person wakes up and realizes that the voice of God, the voice that once called so clearly, has grown faint. Not because he stopped speaking, but because they stopped listening. The most dangerous thing you can do with God is nothing. Because with every day that passes, the heart that once was soft becomes a little harder. The voice of conviction grows a little quieter. The urgency fades and the lie takes root. There is always more time. But my friends, time is not promised. The moments you have now are the only ones you are guaranteed. And there will come a day when the opportunity to turn back is gone. There will come a moment when the weight of eternity will fall upon you, and the decision you have made, whether to seek him or to reject him, will stand forever. Some people live their whole lives telling themselves they will get right with God later. They will think about eternity when they are older, when life slows down, when it is more convenient. But the tragedy is that later never comes. The years pass, the heart grows colder, and one day they stand before the God they spent a lifetime ignoring. And in that moment, there are no more excuses, no more distractions, no more second chances. The decision they made, whether they realized they were making it or not, has been sealed. But it does not have to be that way. Right now, in this moment, you have a choice. You have breath in your lungs. You have a heart that is still beating, and that means God is still calling. He has not given up on you. He has not turned away. Even now, after all the times you have ignored him, after all the moments you have walked in the other direction, his arms remain open. But you must respond. You must make the choice. because every decision has a consequence, and eternity is too long to get this one wrong. There is a moment coming for every person, a moment when the distractions will fade, when the noise of this world will be silenced, when the opinions of others will no longer matter. A moment when you will stand face to face with the God who made you, and in that moment the only thing that will matter is what you did with him while you had the chance. People spend their whole lives chasing after things that will not last. They build careers, they store up wealth, they chase pleasures and comforts, all the while pushing God to the side. They convince themselves that this life is all there is, that what they can see and touch is all that matters. But what they fail to realize is that eternity is not just some distant reality. It is the very thing rushing toward them with every passing breath. And the question is not if you will stand before God, but when. The question is not if you will give an account, but what you will say when you do. Some will say, but I was a good person. They will list their kindness, their charity, their good deeds. They will speak of all the times they tried to do what was right. But my friends, goodness is not enough. The standard is not whether you were better than your neighbor or more moral than the next person. The standard is holiness, and not one of us meets it. Others will say, but I believed in God. They will remember the times they sat in church, the times they prayed when things got difficult, the times they felt a stirring in their hearts. But belief alone is not enough. Even the demons believe in God, and they tremble. The question is not whether you acknowledged him, it is whether you surrendered to him. And then there will be those who spent their lives pushing him away. Those who said, I don't need God, or I'll think about him later, they will stand in that moment, realizing that the later they counted on never came. They will see with absolute clarity that the life they lived for themselves has come to an end, and the eternity they ignored has begun. But for those who have surrendered, for those who have trusted, for those who have laid down their pride and given their lives to him, that moment will not be one of fear, but of joy. Because when they stand before God, they will not stand alone. They will stand covered by grace, redeemed by love, welcomed into a kingdom that has no end. And so I ask you tonight, when that moment comes for you, what will you say? What will you have done with the time you were given? What choice will you have made? Because one day the choice will no longer be yours to make.